Hi, this is Kermit the Frog.
Fascinating. I'm Captain Kirk.
Magic is always there, as long as we keep looking for it.
Engage.
What does God need with a starship?
Thank you, love you. Mwah.
I protest. I am not a merry man.
Places, please. And here we go.
Down at Fraggle Rock.
Welcome, doozers, glommers, trash heaps, and things to episode 143 of the MuppeTrek Podcast. I'm Steve.
And I'm Jarman, and we're on a journey across the stars to compare and contrast the creative worlds of Jim Henson and Gene Roddenberry.
What started as reviews of The Muppet Show and Star Trek the original series has expanded into outer space.
And this week we have Fraggle Rock episode Gobo's Discovery and Next Generation episode Pen Pals.
Aw.
But before that, Steve, you know what I want to do? I want to rock.
Well, this is That Rocks. There's all kind of gems, jewels, and geodes in the world, many of which can be found in Fraggle Rock. And this week's gem is boracite, a distant cousin of borax. Unlike that chemical compound, this is not water soluble, and instead stays as a geode or gem. It ranges from blue to green, yellow, and even clear, and it's often found alongside salt deposits during excavation. Commercially, it's used for fire retardant. It's used in the production of fiberglass and regular glass, and it's also used in fluxing to lower melting points of metals for forging and refinement. But due to its properties and its softness and its sucky cleave, it just sucks for jewelry. So almost no one uses it for anything decorative because it just sucks.
If you look at pictures of it, it kind of looks like it could be like a pod for your dishwasher.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, stick it in there.
That's about the color range.
Yeah.
But yeah, besides some industrial uses, no one really gets to enjoy boracite.
Oh,
and that's boracite, and that rocks.
That rocks.
I want to rock!
Well, this week in Fraggle Rock, what's going on? Well, last week I did like the 4-part summary.
Oh, yeah.
With all the different areas. But this week, only 2 people had storylines. Only 2 groups had storylines. So what's up, Doc? Doc gets another one of his inventions rejected. A letter in the mail, and Doc decides to give up inventing for good. He's going to go back to his old habit of being a barber. He practices his cuts on Sprocket, eventually giving Sprocket a fancy curled mustache and claiming that he is going to submit an invention, leaving that he cannot leave his inventor side behind. What's going down on Fraggle Rock? Well, Gobo loses his nerve after a close call with the beast in outer space and fails to get Uncle Traveling Matt's postcard. We get flashbacks to the day that he told Uncle Traveling Matt that he wanted to be a juggler, but Uncle Traveling Matt didn't or doesn't want to hear him and decides that he'll be an explorer just like him. Somewhere else, Boober needs Gobo to lead him to the squeaky cave to get more rock soap, but Gobo is over it. He sends Wembley and Boober off by themselves after giving them some confusing directions. Gobo reads Uncle Traveling Matt's postcard about silly creatures abusing fluffy creatures, but the fluffy creatures are unavailable for comment, and Uncle Traveling Matt gets a haircut. Gobo contemplates his future, singing a sad tune, Once Upon a Time, where he sort of reflects on the earlier, simpler times in his life when it seems like possibilities were in front of him. Red comes into the scene and questions Gobo's moping. She reveals that Wembley and Boober are headed the wrong way and heading for peril, the Great Outer Maze.
Ooh.
Gobo heads out to find them. We get some like massive Dark Crystal vibes as we get views of like a bunch of random creatures in Fraggle Rock.
Oh, yeah.
Gobo is looking frantically, but meanwhile, Boober and Wembley come back without being found by Gobo. And now Gobo is kind of missing. They sing the song What If, where they all sort of take turns thinking about everything that could go wrong. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Gobo adventures on. He gets spooked by something, once again, that looks like Fizzgig from Dark Crystal, just realistically. He sees the belching boulder, so he knows he's close to home. But a red, mysterious light begins to emanate from behind some rocks. He has disturbed the invisible gargoyle. Not gargoyle, garboyle. Gobo is just distraught, and he just wants to be left alone. The others are trying to get him to join them, but he is just done with it. He sings the song The Me I Wanna Be. It's kind of a rocky tune where he expresses the frustration with all the things that other people want him to be. Just then, the invisible gargoyle attacks Fraggle Rock. Wind and fog and red lights sweep through the rock, disturbing everyone and everything. Gobo thinks about, sort of daydreams, what it would be like to tell Uncle Traveling Matt about becoming a juggler, and fantasy Uncle Traveling Matt takes it really well. Gobo realizes that he's the one that disturbed the gargoyle, so he has to face it to save his friends. He lures the invisible gargoyle in with Wembley's siren sound and overtakes it. Gobo realizes that really what he wanted to do with his life is help his friends.
No.
He gets up the courage and finally retrieves Uncle Traveling Matt's postcard. So, Jarman, what did you think of this week's episode of Fraggle Rock?
First of all, big connection there. One of the first things you mentioned in the episode is rock soap. We were talking about boracite, which looks like rock soap.
That's right.
That's pretty funny. Another deep episode here. Mostly, what's David Goltz is the guy who plays Gobo? What's his name?
No, David Goltz would be Boober.
Oh, okay. Damn, I'm forgetting too.
Of course, you're friggin' stumping me with names.
I kind of want to know his name because it's about him.
I can think of like every other peripheral
Just
character.
about the
Jerry
lead
Nelson.
character.
There we go.
What is it?
Nelson. Jerry Nelson.
Oh, it's Jerry Nelson. Okay. Just a really good job with making this not just goofy, like he was really getting painfully upset about his existential crisis about what he should be doing with his life, to the point where his voice was shaking and stuff. And I was just like, geez, man, like maybe take it down a bit because this is a kid's show. Like I was feeling for
we got this. We got Moki's funeral next episode.
I know,
it's
what's
getting
going
darker
on
and darker.
Them cowering in that little cave 2 episodes ago. Like, it was just like, it was so good though, so well acted. I thought like maybe it's too well acted for the show. But some really good quick songs that were in there that none of them went on too long. They were kind of fun. And like, even though it was kind of a heavy episode, the songs kind of lightened it up a little bit, which was kind of nice. But yeah, Gobo gets his like purpose and his clarity. I thought that was really nice. And the invisible monster was pretty cool. I mean, they didn't want to pay for a big, crazy, scary monster. I guess they just made an invisible one, which is kind of neat.
Lights and wind and a little bit of fog machine in there, and you're good to
That's
go.
all you need. Strobe light. But yeah, and also, how can you beat Sprocket with a twirly mustache? I mean, that's just the best.
Dude, that was a good look. It really was.
I don't know why he's upset. It looks fantastic. But I don't know. What'd you think of this one?
I was a little bit bummed. It just didn't feel like it has much stuff
Yeah.
going on. And it really missed the, mind you, the point of the episode was introspection. So I get the why, but it just is missing that external point of view, a trash heap giving advice, Gobo witnessing the doozers doing something that gives him clarity, like it just was sort of missing that external force to illustrate this happening. Which, mind you, was kind of the point, but that doesn't necessarily mean I dug it.
Right.
So you're right. Good songs, nice and quick, like all short, nothing crazy. But like otherwise, this was sort of like low on the comedy factor, high on the drama factor, and didn't have enough sort of the other stuff to balance it out. So this one's kind of towards the bottom for me. It just didn't feel very Fraggle Rocky.
Yeah, I'm like, it almost got better for me because I'm starting to just get used to that. But I'm wondering how they kept an audience at this point because it's really good quality shows, but they're like so dark and kind of like there's not the levity that they started out with. So I kind of agree. It was just kind of below normal for me because there's just not enough happy factor. They're Fraggles. Come on.
Yeah,
I
absolutely agree.
It was a weird. It's a
weird
weird
not
one.
nearly enough silly songs.
Yeah.
Not nearly enough. But yeah, so I don't know. Probably mid to low.
Same here. Yeah. Not terrible. Well made, but it's just not my thing.
Yeah. Well, what the hell were those silly creatures up to this week? Well, the fluffy creatures are actually sheep that are being sheared. Sheep shearing goes back to prehistory. In fact, the oldest recorded city in Europe, called Knossos, which is on the island of Crete, derived its early wealth from wool and sheep. We don't know this because we found shears or bones or anything. We found stone tablets that have documentation of shearing records and poundage, as well as breeding charts and that kind of stuff from Knossos. But shearing's been done by hand really for the majority of its existence. It wasn't until the late 1800s that the first machine trimmers were actually produced. But by 1915, over the course of 25 years, every major shearing operation in the world was machine driven, even in remote places.
So still by hand, but with like the machine in your hand.
But with the machine, but not shears, like not someone doing this. And nowadays, sheep shearing is like a professional competition with speed and accuracy trials and huge followings in the Midwest United States, as well as Australia.
Very random.
That's right. So, Darwin, what did you think was the best Muppeteering moment this week?
I'm going to go with kind of how you described it was funny. Like it's Dark Crystal moments where we had all these random new creatures that we'd never seen before. Some were scary, some were cute, some were wild and nuts. And they were all just moving differently. None of them are Fraggle, so they're kind of outside their comfort zone of Muppeteering in the show, at least. So that just kind of like excited me. Like all these different puppets that we hadn't seen before.
And not only that, there was like one that was disguised in a wall.
Yeah.
You were looking at it, and then like it opened its eyes, and that weird fizz gig thing.
I think they went, Mah! That one.
Yeah. And I think my favorite moment, it was such a simple moment, was when Doc was giving Sprocket a haircut and went to go boost him up in the chair. And Doc like pushes the pedal below, which doesn't exist, to raise the chair. That also doesn't exist, and Sprocket's head like jolts up like he's being raised in the chair, and it was just such a good effect for like no work.
Yeah,
like like they didn't have a prop, they didn't have anything other than a sound that was going to happen, and this actor doing this.
That's true.
So for that one effect, I have to give it to Sprocket in the barber chair.
That's all it takes. That's all it takes.
That's right. So, Jordan, what happened on this week's episode of Star Trek The Next Generation?
Well, this time around, we got pen pals, and the Enterprise is investigating a system of planets that seem to be becoming destroyed by this rogue tectonic activity, causing volcanoes to erupt and like destroy these planets. But they all seem to be not inhabited, so it's fine. But for some reason, they decide to put Wesley Crusher in charge of a team to figure out why it's happening. So Wesley selects a team, but they're all much older and more experienced than him. So he's seeking out the advice of the senior officers on how to best handle it and how to talk to someone who's more experienced than you and still give them commands. But meanwhile, Data receives a signal from someone on a nearby planet, and it's a radio signal from a young alien girl. And she's asking for help because she sees her planet is becoming unstable. But unfortunately, the alien girl's people are a pre-warp civilization. So the Prime Directive states they can't interfere. But when the whole bridge crew hears her pleas over the radio, she sounds so pathetic and sad and cute that they're all moved to go help her. So while Wesley and his team figure out how to stop the planets from exploding, they go to the girl's planet, but they can't radio her to let her know that they're coming to help because of this growing interference from the tectonic seismic activity. So Picard reluctantly lets Data beam down to tell her in person. When he gets there, she's all alone, and her home is about to be destroyed, so he quickly decides to beam back aboard the Enterprise with this little alien girl. And she's basically attached to him at the hip. She doesn't want to talk to anybody. She only trusts Data because he's been talking to him for a while. It's kind of cute. Picard isn't happy about that, but Wesley and his team finally pull through, and they're able to fix the planet by shooting a giant torpedo into the tectonic plates. And they take the girl to the med bay to do a procedure on her to make her forget the whole experience, kind of Men in Black style. But Data is sad that she's going to forget him, but he's happy that at least he will remember her from now on. So he takes the girl back down to the planet while she sleeps, but he leaves her with a small little singing stone that she found in the doctor's office on the Enterprise. So she'll have something to remember them by even when she forgets. And that is Pen Pals. So, Steve, what'd you think of this episode?
Okay, so some things I liked. I liked sort of the unassuming premise in that, like, it's a simple geological survey.
Yeah.
And Picard gets to have some leisure time and go ride his horses or something. I like the idea of Wesley needing to pick a team in his first command. It's an interesting sort of subject to observe because, like, you know, Wesley hasn't gone to Starfleet Academy.
Right.
His education seems to almost exclusively be happening here. And so it's interesting to see, like, okay, how does this progress? Like, how does he actually go on without going to Starfleet Academy?
Yeah, how does he learn?
I liked Dr. Platsky's sort of, we'll say, like, motherly concern and voice of reason surrounding Wesley, and sort of, sort of taking the place of Crusher, of Beverly Crusher, kinda.
True.
I like the idea of Data just talking to some random signal, just like in outer space. I thought it was really funny to see Picard on horseback. Like the holodeck stuff is so off-putting sometimes. But it was funny to see him on horseback because then we get Kirk on horseback in like Star Trek Generations.
Yes.
When he's in the Nexus and they go on a horse ride together. So suddenly it's like, oh, okay, I guess Picard.
There's something in the trivia for that later.
Okay. And I liked kind of, if anything, an opposing message in that the realization that while Data went down to the planet to like save everyone or save the planet, he went and there was only the little girl there. So like he went down for many and only saved a few, which is sort of that like opposite mentality or of like, Star Trek 2, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So it was just funny to see like
that's true. He
went down for the needs of the many and came back with the few.
But really all for that little girl because that's all he really cared about.
Right. And it was real fun to watch like Data breaking rules.
Yeah, it's true.
And like the reveal that he had been talking to this little girl for like weeks. Some things I struggled with a bit. Wes getting bullied by his team right from the get-go. I just wish they had given him a little bit more time to develop.
I didn't see as full bullying. It was more just like, and ask if you need help, just let us take over. It's okay. And so they weren't like mean to him per se, but it was just kind of like, they're walking over him,
like,
kind of.
Like, give him a chance to screw up and then they take, like give him that opportunity. Even from a plot perspective, it's more interesting to watch the try.
I could see that.
And the turn with, what is his name? Davies, the like slightly older know-it-all.
Oh yeah, the engineer guy.
Questioning everything Wesley says all the way to suddenly like, you got it, was like too quick and wasn't earned.
I can see
especially after Wesley earlier was like, why didn't you run the scan? He's like, it's going to take like 6 hours. He's like, do you think we should? The guy's like, no, we shouldn't. And then for him to just go back and say, do it. And he's like, got it.
No fighting at all. Yeah.
I thought it went into a really weird existential place when they were talking kind of about the Prime Directive and non-interference, and they started talking about the cosmic plan. But what if this is part of the cosmic plan? And then it was just like, why are we taking to this odd existential space when we're talking about like regulations?
That's the first time I wrote, or maybe the second time this episode, where I wrote something. I never used this term, but it felt like it was overwritten. Like there was just too much.
It didn't need to be
flowery language and big talking and very philosophical, and it just felt out of place in what's going on in the episode.
That and then earlier when they're talking about Wesley's first
same thing.
command, it was the same way. You're absolutely right.
That whole scene just felt no one was talking like their characters talk, and they were all speaking very philosophically, like they're out of the situation. They were talking about it somewhere else 100 years from now or something. It was really weird. It didn't feel right.
And then this episode really was hard for sussing out what was the A and B plot.
They kind of intertwined.
Because the Wesley plot was the A plot for like the first half, and then they switched gears. And suddenly Data and the little girl was the A plot for the second half. And that's just not typical, and it felt like neither plot got their due because they tried to do this weird switch off thing.
I feel like the whole thing felt clunky. Like there was some strange writer that didn't normally write for them or something. It just felt... This feels wrong. I feel like none of the characters were speaking like they normally speak, except for Wesley. He sounded the same as he always does. But like everyone else just felt weird. I don't know.
I agree. This episode isn't without its merits, though. Like we do like some good Data stuff.
Yeah.
Good Wesley development.
I like the Wesley
the situations they used just felt bad, felt undeveloped or unrealized.
And unnatural a lot of the times, the way what they were doing, why they were doing it, talking strange. I think my favorite moment is it was something about Data and Picard talking about him. Basically, Data broke the Prime Directive, and I think Data just goes, "Oops," or no, Picard says, "Oops." I think it was like that just feels weird, not a place, but it was funny. I don't know. But I got to put this towards the bottom for me of this season too, because it just didn't feel right. It was good thoughts. It was good ideas, but didn't come together well at all.
Nah, it clunky. Clunky is the right word.
Clunky is a very good word for it. Yes. But yeah, so kind of disappointing week so far, these 2 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, we're not all, but here's the thing. We're due for one where like they're both spectacular episodes.
I agree. Next week could be pretty good. We'll see. Trek facts for this episode.
The top of everyone's list, right?
What Q-Who?
Q-Who?
Not really top of it, no, because there's better Q episodes, but it's not a bad episode, but it's considered fun kind of thing. Okay. So like this episode, the trivia is kind of meh as well. But this is the first episode where Picard actually drinks Earl Grey tea on screen. He had previously ordered a cup of Earl Grey from the replicator in the Contagion episode, but because of the computer malfunction, it turned into a potted plant, so he didn't get to drink it. So Patrick Stewart, as you were talking about earlier, was not entirely comfortable with horse riding at the time of the shooting of this episode, but later he went on to film Star Trek Generations, where he shared horseback scenes with William Shatner, and William Shatner is a horse owner and a rider enthusiast, and you can see his mastery of his horse during that whole scene. So Shatner coached Patrick Stewart on how to and provide a great deal of help as well as various tips. And one such tip that he could was that he could prevent one's pants from riding up by wearing pantyhose underneath your pants. So apparently every time Shatner rides, he wears pantyhose. So good for him. I think along with the characters being very different in this episode, they pointed this out in the trivia, but this episode marks a notable shift in Pulaski's attitude toward Data. Because previously she had regarded him as a complex machine that merely simulates human feelings, but now she's on Data's side and defending everything he's saying about saving the little girl. But I think that just goes along with, I don't think she's changing direction. I think it's just this episode anomaly because they just didn't treat anybody like their characters. But I don't know. So that's episode Pen Pals. But Steve, what are our Trek connections this time around?
Well, Sarjenka, the little girl, was played by actress Nikki Cox, who got her big kind of spot in a show called Unhappily Ever After that ran in the late 90s. She played the character Tiffany Malloy, part of a family. The show sort of featured this like nearly dysfunctional family where the father has sort of like a mental break and starts having discussions with a imaginary toy bunny.
Yeah.
I guess he's imagining a toy bunny as being alive. The bunny was voiced by Bobcat Goldthwait and puppeteered by a guy named Alan Troutman. Well, Alan Troutman was a puppeteer for Dinosaurs, Muppet Vision 3D, Muppets Tonight, Muppets from Space, Muppet Wizard of Oz, sad, and the most recent Muppet Haunted Mansion.
Oh, nice. He's a big Muppet guy.
Nikki Cox worked with a Muppeteer.
I watched that show a little bit growing up because it was like a successor to Married with Children, like the dumpy dad who's just like...
It was certainly on those coattails.
Yeah, it's like the hot daughter, the dumpy dad, and like all that stuff, yeah.
And then Ensign Davies, the sort of smartass, was played by an actor called Nicholas Cascone. He played Doc in the movie Mr. Baseball, which starred Tom Selleck. Tom Selleck was in the movie In and Out, which was directed by Frank Oz, and he made an appearance as himself superimposed over animation in season 1 of The Muppet Babies.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
Muppet Babies.
Make our dreams come true.
Oh my gosh. Make my dream come true and tell me how these episodes are so similar, Steve.
Both feature people coming to terms with responsibility. Gobo confronting his identity as an adventurer and explorer, and Wesley wrestling with his first command and interpersonal relationships.
Very true. Both have a character having to save a world from destruction. Gobo has to save the Fraggle Rock from the invisible gargoyle, and Wesley and his team have to stop the worlds from lava destruction.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
The gargoyle. Both feature a major conflict we don't actually get to see, and this is kind of yours. The invisible gargoyle and the tectonic crystal dilithium, whatever the hell.
That's true.
I didn't even know what to call it.
I can't either.
We don't see either of these things. We just get told about them by a bunch
That's
of
a good point. We don't see either. Both have characters stopped from having a good time. Picard is stopped from riding his horsey in the holodeck, and all the Fraggles have an awesome day planned, and the gargoyle attacks.
It's friggin' ruined.
We never get to hear the end of the radish joke, so I'm just upset.
From like Granny Fraggle or whatever. Both feature someone eagerly awaiting correspondence. Data waiting eagerly for the little girl to message him, and Gobo waiting for Uncle Traveling Matt's new postcard.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Whoa! Transporter malfunction. Transporter malfunction.
All right, it's time of the show where you take one character from one episode and transport it to the other out of nowhere, making everything crazy. Steve, what do you got for us?
Trek to Rock. I'm going to bring over the young Wesley Crusher and replace Gobo, facing up against his desire to be an explorer, or maybe it's compelling him to be like his father and follow in his footsteps.
Oh, yes.
Sort of that Uncle Traveling Matt arc as well there, as Wesley wrestles with who he's supposed to be.
I think Wesley be an excellent juggler.
He would.
Trek to Rock, I bring over the tectonic plates to replace the garboil. So instead of having to retrap the garboil, Gobo would have to invent technology to rearrange tectonic plates. They're screwed.
To like disintegrate the dilithium crystalline structures or some shit.
He won't even know what that is.
Trek to Rock, Rock to Trek, bring over Worf and Geordi to replace Wembley and Boober, going on their crazy mismatch adventure where they're really in no danger and don't get lost at all, while Gobo goes out to look for them. And what were they doing in this episode anyway? That's my final note. Worf and Geordi weren't doing anything. Bring them over.
I like it. I bet Geordi's visor could see the invisible monster.
Oh, true.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Rock to Trek, I bring Boober over to replace Sarjenka, because Boober would give radio signals that would be so depressing. The whole Enterprise crew would immediately come and save his planet because they'd be so depressed. He'd be really good at distress.
I guess I'll just die.
Or I could die. You can save us or I'll just die. I don't care. Whatever.
Maybe a disease will take me first.
Yeah, so that brings us to the end of episode 143 of the MuppeTrek Podcast.
Join us next time for Fraggle Rock episode, Moki's Funeral.
I hope not. And Star Trek The Next Generation episode, Q-Who.
So, from the lovers, the dreamers, and us.
Live long and prosper, everyone. Damn it.
Thanks for listening to the MuppeTrek Podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media on Facebook and Twitter.
Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform.
This podcast has been brought to you by A Play on Nerds.